Hey guys, welcome back to another video. This is Slypod, made by a company named MOZA, and in short, it is a monopod stick, as you can see here. Has little feet, which we can talk about a little bit later, and it's also a slider. So this tube section here travels exactly 11 inches or 28 centimeters. And let me grab my phone here because according to B&H, this thing can hold 20 pounds safely and 40 pounds maximum or unsafely. So this thing blew up at NAB in 2019. Here we are with the actual unit shipping, and I thought it would be interesting to see if this thing is worth its price tag of $500. And as a quick disclaimer, MOZA did send this out for review free of charge. I'll also note that this is actually the second unit they sent us. So a lot of us reviewers got a first copy which had some issues with wobbling when the camera was going up and down. That seems to have been resolved, and it seems this second batch of units has been fixed. So what's up with Slypod? Is it good? Is it worth $500? Let's get into it and start by talking about what comes with this unit in the box. Obviously, you get the Slypod itself. You also get a really nice case that everything fits neatly into. Additionally, you'll have a wooden female quarter 20 to female quarter 20 adapter, feet for the bottom of the Slypod, two different head choices depending on if you're going to bring your own head or use the one that's included with the Slypod, a camera plate, and optionally a couple cables to connect to the camera to control taking photos or starting and stopping your videos. Putting Slypod together and getting it up and running is very straightforward. In short, you take the wooden piece that comes with Slypod and you mount it to the very bottom. Of course, that's optional. If you're going to use it like this, you don't need it. And then you have the feet, of course, and you can put the whole thing on the ground and get really nice up and down shots, as well as using it as a motorized monopod. Once you have this wooden piece and the feet attached, you can then slap on the included head, which has kind of a rotating action to it. So you can kind of set up different angles with your camera, or there's a smaller attachment allowing you to use your own tripod head. So this is really nice if you have a tripod head you really like, and it's a little easier to use than the one that comes with the unit. The way the head works is pretty straightforward. You have a knob here, so you can kind of rotate and spin the camera around or pan it, if you will. And then there's also a little knob here that'll loosen, and once loosened you can press in, and that will essentially allow you to adjust and lock your camera in place. And last but not least, if you have supported cables, you can plug them in. Unfortunately, they kind of get stretched toward the end of this slider's range, so you might want to pay attention to that. Controlling Slypod is very straightforward. At the end of the monopod or tripod, Slypod, whatever it's called, there is 3 buttons. A silver power on and off, which you can hold. It'll power up. You'll get the LED ring light as you see here. And then there's a plus and minus button. Once on, you can go ahead and use that plus and minus to start changing the direction of Slypod. As you can tell, this thing is pretty loud. I'll let it get to the end here. There we go. So that was holding the minus button. I can also hold the plus button to send it the other direction. And then you can use the plus and minus button to start slowing down the action. So with just the buttons, without including the application, which we'll talk about a little bit later, you have 16 speeds, which is pretty great. But with the application on your phone, you can even slow it down further. I'll go ahead and speed it up to get it to the end of its range. There's the full 11 inches. If I want to return and power off the unit, I press this silver button 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and it'll start blinking red and come all the way back down and close up so you can quickly grab it, throw it in your bag, and you're good to go. If you'd like to enter the loop mode where it just continuously goes back and forth, you can simply press the minus and plus button until this ring turns blue and blinks blue once, just like that. Now we're in loop mode and it'll just go back and forth. It's very straightforward to use, and I really appreciate how strong this mount is right in the middle of the Slypod. Now there are a ton of additional features and ways to control MOZA when you install an application on your phone and connect to it over Bluetooth. Connection is really straightforward. You open up the app, you hit enter, and boom, you have an overview of your Slypod, including battery life, which is pretty handy, and then several different ways to control your unit. Before you go into playing with all that stuff, I'd recommend updating the firmware on your Slypod, which can be done via the app. You have to plug it into the wall and you're good to go. And then we have things like remote control, which is a very simple way to change the position of your Slypod, as well as adjust the speed, and then you can press and hold the upwards or downwards buttons to start booming or sliding or however you have your Slypod set up. You can also hit the take photo button to either take a still or start the video recording on your camera if you have the cable connected. And you'll notice at the top of the app there are two other modes. Instead of the regular, we can switch over to gear shift. This will essentially start very slow, speed up, and then slow down again. And then we have acceleration, which will start very slow and then ramp up to the speed that you set, whether that be 100% or something a little slower. And if we back out of this whole mode, the remote control mode, we can switch over to creative video. This has a ton of options, including setting several different paths. So you can have it, bounce back and forth at the end, and then after a certain amount of time, start working a different part of the slider. So lots of flexibility there. There's also step and gradient with a ton of different options to really control the movement on your Slypod. Finally, there's the silent mode, which just keeps it from going super fast. And as you heard earlier, it's very, very loud. And then in the settings mode, we can go ahead and calibrate, which will recalibrate the Slypod and do silly things like change the indicator light. So maybe I really don't care for this green. I can just go over here and switch it to purple, if Gerald and Dunn was coming over this afternoon or something like that. So a couple different things you can control on your phone with the app. And the thing that I like the most with the app is that you can go to barely visible slow movement. So if you really want a slow, smooth slide on the slider, you can do that. So I'll just go in here and I'll go ahead and move the slider all the way back, and I'll yell because this thing is super loud. And I'm going to set the speed on my phone all the way to 1%. So really, really slow. Now I'm simply going to press upwards and I'm going to hold it. And believe it or not, that's actually moving. I really do promise that it is moving. It's just so slow. So with the application, you can get insanely slow stuff, which can be handy depending on your lens combination. So that's kind of a technical overview of setting up and using Slypod. Now I want to talk more creatively about how you can use this and what you can do with it. So one of the straightforward ones is using it as a slider, kind of like you've been seeing me do this here. What's really interesting and where this really stands out against a slider is there's no track in front of the camera. So you can have a really wide angle lens on this thing and do a nice slow push, and you're never gonna see track. And of course, it's very easy to kind of switch things up here. So right now, I'll go ahead and kind of even out my camera here, kind of pushing the camera forward and up, but I can very easily unlock the camera from the actual Slypod here, like that, and rotate the camera around. And now it's doing the same thing, but it's going to be doing it kind of at an angle here, kind of doing a jib dolly movement, if you will, off to one side. Another thing that's cool about this unit compared to a slider is while you are having the monopod or the Slypod do its thing, you can be moving your tripod head around and do all kinds of really interesting, unique things. So pretty cool stuff. And then of course, finally, we can simply put the feet on this thing and set it on the ground and have the camera go up and down. That's one of my favorite ways to use the Slypod because that's a difficult shot to get. Even if you have a slider, to have a simple straight boom up shot is very difficult, and this makes it so easy. You just grab the feet, you throw it on the bottom of your Slypod, you stick it on the ground and get your shot. At this point, I'm going to show you some footage as we get into our conclusion and pros and cons, because there are definitely some things that I don't care for on this unit. So the first pro with Slypod is the ease of setup. You literally pull it out of the bag, and if I were you, I would just leave it completely built, stick it in with your tripod or your light stands, and then you can just whip it out and you're good to go. It's so easy to use. Leave a quick release plate on the center column and maybe the feet on the bottom, and there's almost no shot you can't get within seconds after you power it on. Another great feature with this is the rigidity, or how strong it feels, even when you put a lot of weight on it. So I would be very comfortable putting 20 pounds or more on Slypod without having to worry about it. The application is actually fairly well thought out and not cumbersome to set up. I hate stuff where you have to create networks and connect stuff. You hit enter and you're good to go. And the shots are very smooth. Now, when you're going vertically, there can sometimes be a little wobble. So you might try using it in a configuration where you have it on a tripod tilted way up versus using it on the feet, something to test depending on the size and weight of your camera and the offset of that that weight. But compared to the first unit I got from MOZA, this one is much, much better. Now let's get to the nasty stuff. So the first one is going to be the noise. This thing is not quiet, and that can be a problem depending on what you're shooting. If you're trying to use this in the background of a wedding ceremony, that's probably going to bother some people. The travel of this unit is only 11 inches, which depending on your camera and lens configuration might not do much for you at all. And then another one that's really annoying is the power button on this unit isn't recessed, so it sticks out more than anything else on the end of this, handle here. That means sitting in your bag, it might turn itself on and do who knows what. And finally, this unit is $500, which depending on how you're going to use it, could be worth it or not, but it's hardly a super cheap piece of equipment. That said, I have thoroughly enjoyed playing with this thing, and I think for certain people, it is an amazing tool. I'm thinking mainly of wedding filmmakers. Something like this would be awesome to have in a backpack or in your bag that you could quickly get very nice, slow shots without taking up multiple stands, bringing a slider with you, and all of that. Similarly, I think it's one of the easiest ways to get establishing shots or just mix things up. So if you do YouTube videos, a lot of B-roll and tabletop product footage type shoots, something like this could be a really easy way to get a very interesting shot. Couple that with some good autofocus, which this GH5 doesn't have, and you're off to the races with a really nice setup. So that's gonna do it for my review of the MOZA Slypod. You can check it out in the link in the description. If you enjoyed this video, we have more here on the channel, of course, and we also sell camera guides if you wanna learn more about getting the best video quality possible out of your camera. That's gonna do it for me. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Dadgummit, I was gonna do a cool